trouble trying to sleep. I'm counting sheep but running out. As time ticks by, still I try. No rest for cross-tops in my mind. On my own, here we go. My eyes feel like they're gonna bleed. Right up and bulging out my skull. My mouth's dry. My face is numb. Fucked up and spun out in my room. On my own, here we go. Mind set on overdrive. The clock is laughing in my face. Crooked spine. My senses dull. That's the point of delirium. On my own, here we go. I feel like they're gonna bleed. Right up and bulging out my skull. My mouth dry. Face is numb. Fucked up and spun out in my room. On my own, here we go.
Hello, this is Godzilla here. Welcome to a reaction video, and today we have to do D-Man review on Kenshin, on the Godzilla Kenshin Trilogy. I'm pretty sure it has a different name. I'll probably put it in the title with the title in the video. But we'll be reacting to his review on the Kenshin Trilogy. Yes, I've been waiting for this for a very long time. A very, very long time. But it's finally here. The Kenshin Trilogy review. It's finally here. It's finally time to react it. So, with that said, let me just share screen. So I don't know why I didn't do a Princess Mononoke reaction. I guess maybe it's because I was at my grandparents' house when that video came out. That's probably the reason why I didn't do reaction to that. So yeah.
What's up, everybody? D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and this one is going to be pretty freaking hype, pretty exciting. This video is a special request from Patreon supporter AknoGoji, and a special personal request long-standing from my friend Chris, who you guys know as GojiFan93, who, by the way, is back on YouTube. In this video, we are going to be doing my review of the Godzilla Kenshin trilogy, aka the greatest Godzilla fan film project that has ever happened, in my humble opinion, and I'll explain to you why. Let's do it, my dudes! Yes, big thank you to Patreon supporter AknoGoji for shouting this one out and requesting this video. Also, Akno, like, I'm so 100% positive this is in fact what you requested, but for some reason, when I went back to find the DM of you sending me that, I cannot find it. So if I'm wrong, that's crazy. I'm so confident I'm right. I've had it in my notes forever, unless I totally mistyped it. Big thank you to AknoGoji for the huge amount of support you've shown me over the years. And I really appreciate it, man. Huge thank you. I appreciate it so much. And also, big shout out to my friend Chris for not only taking on such an ambitious project and making this trilogy back in the day, but for reaching out and asking that I review it when this movie first came out. He and I have joked about this for a long time because he asked, and it was like the worst weekend he possibly could have asked because things just went crazy right afterward for me. And it was like, for reals, I've been so busy ever since in so many different ways. But I'm finally doing it. And both of them asked that I review the third part of the trilogy, Godzilla Wrath of the Hybrid. But like, what's the point in that? I can't just review part 3 without reviewing the first 2. That's what I gotta do here. So let's jump into what I think is the greatest Godzilla fan project that has ever happened, at least in the age of the internet, at least as far as internet creators. This has gotta be the top tier. And let me explain why. Starting out with Godzilla World Apocalypse. Taking lore from multiple...
Oh my god, the first thing that gets me is that. I wish
saving money feels right. Just like when things are packed tidy and tight. Get auto insurance that fits your budget and
multiple continuities to create their backstory, but primarily pulling from the Heisei series, we find ourselves in the Kenshin timeline. That's the name that's been given to this timeline retroactively. This is a Godzilla fan project timeline, and it starts out in the year 2013 with Godzilla and Anguirus duking it out on Monster Island until Godzilla unleashes and beats up Anguirus. We then jump into the city with Varan and Godzilla fighting over a city power plant, with Godzilla eventually winning and Varan retreating. In a very flooded Tokyo, Rodan and Mothra battle it out, with Rodan attempting to prove that he's a worthy kaiju of taking on Varan and Godzilla all by himself. This eventually leads to Godzilla's destination, his goal, which is Osaka, where an all-out battle takes place between all of the kaiju. The 3 kaiju that are the guardian monsters all take on Godzilla, who is the ultimate evil. Eventually, unfortunately, Godzilla wins, gaining unlimited power and going on an enormous rampage and a world domination tour of destruction, destroying much of humanity. And that is the first film, very short and sweet. This was created by Plutonium2356, aka Nico, an incredibly nice dude and a friend of mine who I met at G-Fest 2019. Huge shout out, Nico. I hope you're doing well. And of course, GojiFan1993, aka Chris. This fan film was an incredible effort in creative problem solving. I think above all else, that's what it demonstrates, is some incredibly ambitious people who absolutely did not have the means of pulling off what they had in their heads, and then finding a way to do so against all odds. They didn't have any resources when creating this thing. They just used their sheer creativity, and I can't love it more. I love it. Because they couldn't get an animator at the time, they relied on gameplay footage from Godzilla Unleashed and crafted a story around it, obviously controlling the monsters they wanted to create the narrative they needed, and then taking some of the cutscenes from that game and redubbing them over in order to create a story. Rather than making films using toys, which I think that's a very hard thing to do and to pull pull off. I would not say I've seen one that I think is as successful as any of these three movies, even a little bit. Rather than trying to use toys to pull off the
have
story
you heard
that
of
they're trying to
Godzilla?
pull off, they got incredibly creative and came up with a story using gameplay footage from Godzilla Unleashed. This is a lot more immersive to me than a lot of those toy films, because all the ones that I've seen, and I'm sure there's some really great ones out there that I just haven't seen yet, but all the ones that I've seen, it's like kids doing voices of action figures that are supposed to be like adult military soldiers, and it's always so ridiculous. It's so hard to get into it. Here, because it's a video game and because there's cutscenes and artwork to carry us through the story, it's a lot more immersive for me. This film really makes an impressive attempt to tell a story with such limited resources, and in my opinion, it pulls it off way better than it has any right to. And so the bar has been set there, where it's like incredibly creative problem solving, but at the end of the day, the technology was not with their vision. So let's see how things progressed in part 2, Godzilla, The Return of Space Godzilla. We pick up 2 years later with Godzilla returning and heading to Nagasaki. Meanwhile, the Vortak mothership approaches Earth and discovers Space Godzilla's remains. We now have new villains created for this timeline. They resurrect Space Godzilla and send him after Godzilla. Space Godzilla's looking like a Super 7 variant now. Space Godzilla beats up Godzilla and then battles the military. I love it. I love the way he uses his anti-gravity powers. It's such a creative and rad use of that. I freaking love it, man. I actually think Space Godzilla is cooler in this movie than he is in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I just think the ideas they came up with, especially with the way he's throwing those crystals around, it's so cool to me. I really like it. Steve Martin Jr., of course, a sort of tie-in character to Godzilla 1956, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and Godzilla 1985, Steve Martin Jr. shows up and reveals that he is a survivor of the Osaka incident from the last film. He explains that unlike his father who perished there, he made it out alive. He returns in order to give some advice to the government, which they use him very similar to how they used Steve Martin in Godzilla 1985. He warns of the appearance of Godzilla's son in Nagasaki. The military then launches Hyper Mecha King Ghidorah, a mechanized version of King Ghidorah with all three mechanical heads, in order to fight baby Godzilla. And as you can imagine, HMKG just crushes baby Godzilla. It's humiliating. They attempt to humanize Yuki, one of our main soldiers, played by my buddy Rob, and Steve Martin Jr., in a scene that I like a lot. It's just a quiet little human scene. But then Martin learns that HMKG runs on nuclear energy, and so he rats out the whole program, and he runs away. Space Godzilla and Jr. then fight in the city until Godzilla appears to defend his son. Space Godzilla absolutely trashes this duo, mutilating Godzilla in the process, until HMKG pulls up and puts up a pretty good fight, but ultimately loses. Godzilla is eventually killed, and Jr. evolves into a more powerful Godzilla as a result, and kills Space Godzilla, causing Vorticia to retreat. She is our main alien antagonist. Junior then comforts Godzilla as he passes on in a great scene that humanizes both characters without any dialogue. Overall, this movie is such an enormous step up from the last. I remember watching this for the first time and genuinely feeling like mind blown that they pulled this off. I couldn't even wrap my head around how you could do this. Not only did they have voice acting, but they also had custom animations, a full storyline with fleshed out characters that is an enormous step up from the last film and is truly an impressive feat from a bunch of first-time filmmakers. And what really shines to me here is Nico's script. Nico's script is a lot stronger than it was in the last time, showing a much stronger emphasis on story and character and a lot less emphasis on just fight, fight, fight. That is one of the biggest tropes of Godzilla fan films, is that they're so focused on the monsters beating each other up, and a lot of the time they overly characterize the monsters, in my opinion. This film found a really cool balance of giving us a really strong actual story while still being able to humanize and characterize their monsters in ways that they weren't able to do in the last film. It's really cool. I also love that this film has new villains and creative uses of the characters' powers that goes beyond what was seen in the films, showing a lot of creativity on the part of the filmmakers, moving beyond just replicating what we've seen in the movies and instead coming up with new ideas. And this one is just overall a huge step up in literally every single regard from the last one. And that leads
up for an adventure.
Always.
That that leads us to the big daddy, Godzilla Wrath of the Hybrid. And by the way, when you tally all these bad boys up, we're looking at like an hour and 40-minute movie here. It's really impressive what they've been able to do. Godzilla Wrath of the Hybrid is a nearly 60-minute film. It is really impressive what they pulled off here. They worked on this thing so hard for years, and it shows. Godzilla Wrath of the Hybrid begins with Martin Jr. visiting his father's grave until he's kidnapped by Vorticia. We then flash back to find out Vorticia was brutally punished for her failure in the last film, and so she kidnaps Martin in order to learn all she can about Godzilla to merge the original Godzilla's corpse with Space Godzilla's corpse in order to create a hybrid monster that can conquer the Earth. Already we're seeing a lot of continuity, a lot of world building, a lot of ties to the previous films, and a lot of new progression for the story and characters. Great stuff! In the remains of the Space Godzilla fight, Yuki is rescued as the only survivor. This happens at the time Martin is abducted. I love they do this super silly little gag on their ride to the military base about being in a badly written monster movie.
Energy. That doesn't make any sense. It sounds like we're in some badly written monster movie.
And it hits so much harder after Sonic 3 just did the same exact gag. Obviously, that's not a new gag in movies, but I always love it when they do it. And it reminded me of Sonic 3, and that killed me in Sonic 3. So I loved seeing it again here. It has been a couple years since I've seen Godzilla Wrath of the Hybrid. I've watched it now, I think, 4 times. The last time I saw it was probably in 2020. So it was pretty cool to rewatch it and have a fresh perspective on it. Aliens invade G-Force, and a mind-controlled Steve is accidentally led to kill Amy, one of her returning characters from the last movie, as he steals Godzilla's cells for Vorticia. They unleash Orga on Earth, and Orga goes on a rampage. And what all of this shows is an incredible amount of restraint, because 23 minutes into a 60-minute film, Godzilla finally awakens and appears in the ocean, blasting Vorticia's ship in a scene that calls back to Godzilla King of the Monsters before Godzilla King of the Monsters was even out. I love it. It's also very Final Wars, obviously. But I love it. I love that. I love that it takes them 23 minutes to build their story, reestablish us in the status quo, and then throw Godzilla in. It's so cool. Here is where Orga fights the military in a scene that calls back to Shin Godzilla. It's really awesome. It's
but Shin Godzilla, but they came up with this idea before Shin Godzilla.
Dedicate more time to building up the enemy monster by having them fight the military, also having a kick-ass destruction scene. And this actually leads directly into Godzilla making landfall and battling the military on his way to Orga. So now the fight begins. Godzilla and Orga begin to battle it out for a while. It's really awesome. G-Force then retaliates, and Steve invades their base again, trying to finish what he started, mutating into a giant monsterish man and attacking them. Luckily, our main heroes are able to overpower Steve and restore him to normal. He then reveals the aliens' plan and warns them that the hybrid is coming to Earth. Our main trio then heads out, piloting Super Mechagodzilla into battle, aiding Godzilla in his fight with Orga and the aliens. I love the battle with Super Mechagodzilla and Godzilla taking on Orga. It's got so many fantastic team-up elements, and it is a lot of fun to watch. The aliens respond to this by beaming down Kudajira, aka the hybrid who kills Orga in order to establish how badass he is. And this is where the final fight kicks off, with the hybrid proving to be an epic opponent. I love the use of the crystal powers. It is so cool. I love the way they've come up with this really new, weird design. Eventually, they do come up with an even cooler one, but that's outside of this trilogy. But yeah, eventually they do come up with an even cooler one. But I like to see them come up with a creative kaiju all of their own. Martin sacrifices himself and Mechagodzilla, but it actually winds up having almost no effect. Luckily, without Martin knowing, Mechagodzilla was also running nuclear energy, and so Godzilla is able to absorb Mechagodzilla's nuclear energy, gaining his red spiral ray, and yet even still, he's overpowered by Kudajira. The Guardian monsters from Godzilla World Apocalypse then make a return here. Their spirits reappear and infuse Godzilla in their spiritual form, empowering him and evolving him into a steaming state with a rainbow ray and a white glow. So cool. The Guardian Godzilla then overpowers the hybrid and Kaiser Ghidorahs him into the mothership, causing it to explode. Godzilla then heads off as the king of the monsters. In the end, a funeral is held for Amy, and the movie comes to a quiet close. With really solid kaiju animation, a custom kaiju, solid use of creative camera angles. I was really surprised with the well-designed cinematography in this film. Stronger writing than we have ever seen before, a real emphasis on character, story, and continuity, voice acting, an original score, and an original kaiju. This is such an enormous step up from the last film, which was already an enormous step up from the film before that. The writing here is at its absolute peak, with a dedicated kaiju and continuity established over a whole trilogy and attempts to do a really new and creative story outside of what was seen in the films. This is a brand new story, not really borrowing from the movies of the past. This is hands down the best Godzilla fan film I have ever seen. Enormous shout out to composer Vinny DeGregory, aka Chenzo on YouTube, for doing a really wonderful job creating a score that takes so many elements from Godzilla films of the past. There's a lot of Godzilla 2000 inspiration in here that I heard. There's a lot of obvious Ifukube that you hear, but also going his own way and creating a brand new score for this film that is really solid. It's really impressive what they accomplished here. This movie has everything you could want. Not only does it give huge fan service to Godzilla fans, but it also goes beyond that to do its own thing. And that's what I love the most about it, is that it's not afraid to do its own thing and to tell its own story. To Chris, to Nico, to Vinny, to all of you guys on Wrath of the Hybrid, to all of you guys who worked on the Kenshin trilogy. I'm sorry it took me so long to review these things, but it is so refreshing to rewatch them. They hold up so much better than even I would have thought, and I loved these things when they came out, but it's so exciting to rewatch these. I love what you guys accomplished. It's so cool. And my little Kudajira figure that I got at G-Fest 2019, kind of hard to see with the camera, but he has happily sat at the top of my Godzilla shelf ever since I first got him. I love this little dude. You guys accomplished something amazing, and I hope all these years later you are incredibly proud because it's so freaking cool. Thank you so much, Akno Goji, for requesting this one. Thank you so much for your support on Patreon. Thank you so much for your patience over the years. I really appreciate you, man. And thank you for 2 awesome requests. Princess Mononoke, that's such an awesome one. I loved that movie. You blew my mind with that request. And then this one, it's been so fun to revisit. Thank you, dude. I was hoping to get this out for the holiday season, as I love to do my Patreon requests around the holiday season, but unfortunately my holiday season was kind of hijacked, as many of you guys know, when my channel was hacked, and it took like all of December to figure things out. So thank you for your patience. Or Patreon requests coming soon. As for now, go check out the Kenshin trilogy. They killed it. That is such a great trilogy. I'll have it linked down below. And if you want to support the Patreon, if you want to request a video of your own, you can use the link in the description below. It's the best way to support this channel, the most direct way to support this channel, and the most direct way to make sure that I can continue to make videos in the first place, but especially videos like this for you. Big thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.
Oh, well, I enjoyed that. You did a perfect review on it, and pretty much on point with what I'll say in my reviews. Pretty much, if I ever did like a review on the Kenshin trilogy, which I might do a review on it in the future, maybe, I don't know. But pretty much on point. I agree with everything he said. Everything was pretty much on point. Yeah. But yeah. Anyway. This is Uncle sign off. And remember, stay big, G fans. See you in the next one. Bye bye.